from Chicago. You're on News Talk Online on Paltalk.com. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Gary. You know, this issue of immigration is one that may actually have an effect in this election. I know in 2006 it was pretty far down the list, but it appears that in this election it does have quite an effect, and it doesn't bode well when you have the potential for a McCain-Obama or a McCain-Clinton race where both of them are pretty much on the same side, or at least they have been. Now, McCain has given some lip service to the idea that we need to secure our borders, but his actions don't speak quite as loudly as his words. So, I think there are an awful lot of us on the conservative side of the Republican spectrum who have a pretty strong issue with John McCain over that, and that's just one of many actually. I mean, McCain-Feingold is still stuck in my craw, and I believe is the greatest attack on the First Amendment that America's ever seen.
Well, thank you, Don. I don't know whether, I guess Ken's out of time here, so we're going to have to say goodbye to him. We'll have him back on during the 7 o'clock show when we resume after an hour hiatus at 6 o'clock Eastern Time. Ken Pauli, WFTL newsman, thank you for joining us. I'll be on your air shortly. You can tell your guys I'll be ready to go when they call after 6 o'clock. I'm happy to return the favor. Thanks for being here with us. Yeah, it's very interesting. We're getting a lot of comments here in the virtual auditorium on Paltalk. Prefix says, I think that there is an argument for ceasing to talk about health care and concentrating on other issues, for example, spending on the arts or sciences and cultural issues. And, it's interesting that Prefix would make this suggestion because without question, those are topics that we don't hear about. Funding of the arts or sciences and cultural issues. People have strong feelings about that one way or the other. And it's not typically one of the issues that we hear addressed during the campaign, not on the debates, not on the stump, not when people call in to talk radio. And there are a lot of issues like this that are meaningful or important to many people that we never hear during the campaign. And I think that that's a turnoff. And I would like to see these campaigns address a multitude of issues because they're different things that interest different people as a way of broadening the appeal of the political process to the entire community, because I think it's very important that people participate in the election process, and that is why News Talk Online is on the road to the White House here at the Florida primary in Miami at the McCain headquarters, and we will continue to follow this election process right through to November, to when it ends, obviously. Let's go to Scott in Canada. Scott, welcome to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Well, one of the questions I wanted to ask them, John McCain has said that healthcare is coming to a perfect storm in America. When we take a look at corporations like Ford, for example, in 2000 they spent $2 billion a year on healthcare benefits to their employees, retirees, dependents, etc. 2007 they spent $3.1 billion. It adds $1,200 to the purchase price of every single Ford car the healthcare costs to Ford. And what people don't realize is Americans are already paying for healthcare, but you're only paying for healthcare for 35%. I'm just wondering, how does McCain's health plan appeal to the Florida voters? Because I do know that they tend to be a bit older, more concerned about things like healthcare, medication, etc., etc. Is this having a big impact in Florida?
Well, unfortunately, Ken is not with us, but he'll be back at about 7:30 Eastern Time, and I'd like to see you come back and readdress that issue then. But I will say that a lot of times people in the United States until recently have pointed up to north of the border where you are, and they have said, we need some kind of a national health care plan. Now, as I understand it, yours is actually a provincial health care plan. Each province has its own plan. but I'm hearing all kinds of horrific stories about people not being able to get the kind of care in an expeditious manner in Canada. In fact, I've heard cases of people from Canada coming to the United States for treatment because they just can't get the treatment that they need up there in Canada. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about that, Scott?
It's all a capacity issue. Acute care, they try to hit at 85% so they can actually have a fluctuation. So, it's not trying to spend excessive amounts. I think it was in 2002, Canadians spent 6% of the gross domestic product on healthcare, and 100% of Canadians were covered. Whereas at that same time, America was spending 13.5% of the gross domestic product and only having 70% of Americans covered, and only 50% of those covered were actually covered adequately. So you only had 1/3 of Americans actually being covered adequately by healthcare, and yet you were spending 13.5% at that time. Now I know healthcare has gone out of control since then. In Canada, it's risen to 9.9% of the gross domestic product. In the States, it's only risen to 15.2%. So we are rising dramatically, but when you actually take a look at the numbers of healthcare and what it actually achieves, the average life expectancy in Canada is 80.5 years of age. In the United States, it's 77.2. The infant mortality rate in the States is 6 infant deaths per 1,000 births. In Canada, it's 5. Now, Canada's not perfect either. We have a lot of challenges that we have to overcome. One of the challenges here is trying to move out of the paper trail of an antiquated system. We have to get to electronic patient management, but we have federal government who's trying to balance their books. Healthcare is pretty much like our military spending. The amount of money that Canada spends on healthcare is kind of like the same as the military budget in the States. So, it's very difficult to throw these huge sums of money out when you're trying to look good at balancing your book. So they're not really addressing the issue. It's getting antiquated. And so, it's a challenge for everyone everywhere. But at the end of the day, do you actually want a healthy workforce? And I think it's very crippling to the American economy not to provide basic healthcare services to all people, because you need that guy to go to work. If he's out and he's laying up, he's out for 6 weeks, 6 months, he's not getting the proper care, things get complicated, there's going to be a problem. So that's a serious issue. And just one other quick point on providing national health care. The private system looks at back-end treatment. They look at, we're going to treat him when he's in the surgery. When you actually have to deal with the whole problem, you try to deal with things on the front end. How do we prevent this guy from getting to the surgery bed? Because that's where it costs the most. Doing the surgery is costly. Teaching someone not to smoke is not as expensive. And so we need good front-end healthcare in the States that is not being supplied by the current system. It does no vested interest in it.
Yeah, I don't think it's a perfect system, but I don't think your system there is perfect either. And I've heard Dr. Mark Siegel, who is a contributor to this show, suggest that the one to emulate is the one in Germany. I haven't taken a good look at that one myself yet, but as this campaign continues and as that issue is addressed more often, I will take a